All right, well, I don't want to make you late to your lesson, next endeavor, and if you know anything about Greeks, we have a joke. We have Greek time, which this is not Greek time. Greek time would be when you're leaving, we would start. So I'm just going to do that. Welcome to the What's Up downtown. This is a wonderful thing that they are doing, and very overwhelmed as a parish priest that they have chosen this building. Of course, I know why, but it has nothing to do with our festival. It has everything to do with a parish that has stood on this lot, parish building that has stood on this lot since the 1800s, since the early 1800s, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So as you're going through this event, which I don't know what else to call it except the church crawl, that's what I'm calling it. I think it's great. If all we did was church crawls, we would not have a problem. We would be good. Just go from church to church and keep praying. That's good. So what I will tell you is just a little bit of history about the building, because I think that's very nice for us to understand about the building. Because that's what matters to us. We know bricks and mortar. I have people that come and help at our festival every summer and are very appreciative of the fact that the building's still here and that it's still being used for the worship of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so that's a big deal to them. And people that come in and they look at the windows and they'll look at names and they'll say, you know, depending if they were on the left side of those windows, then those are the original names that donated the windows. If they're on the right side looking at those names, then those are the people that helped restore them just a few years ago. And just very pleased that we've taken care of our building as best as we can, and very pleased that we have done what we can do to offer this sanctuary to people. So in 1813, none of you were born in 1813. Good, wonderful. I need to get that out of the way, so to make sure, because if anyone was born in 1813, you will give the speech. But in 1813, the Methodist Episcopal combined churches bought a 50 by 34 piece of land on the corner of South and 4th Streets in downtown Steubenville to build a church. It was the first Methodist church that existed in downtown Steubenville at that time. And after it was built, it was termed the Old Ship. That was a title that was given to it, just specifically because there were some people that, you know, were donating it, and that's what they called it. It was the church is the ship. They're going to bring everyone in, and this is how they termed it. And there's other reasons, but, you know, I could be here talking about that forever. Just a few decades later, that church was brought down to the ground, and another one that was rebuilt by a benefactor from Pittsburgh, from the Pittsburgh area, and took his name and you know, had his own life. So that was the second church that was in Steubenville on this lot at that time. And then eventually people kind of said, well, where are you going? And they kept calling it the Old Ship. So, you know, it just kind of, that name kind of just organically came back until the church was expounded upon and kind of expanded on around the turn of the century. Around 1901 was when most of those renovations were completed. And then somewhere along the line, about 15 years later, that combined Methodist Episcopal Church once again decided that they wanted to raise it all back up again. They tore it all down and then built it back up again. And we actually have a copy of a postcard, which was the original architect's rendering of what the building was going to look like in 1914, 1915, when at the time it was called the Calvary Methodist Church, was going through this renovation, I guess is what you want to call it, but it was really just a re-erecting of the building. And that's what they did. And they had that that building for a number of years until at such time they did not see fit to keep it, and they got a wonderful offer by the Greek Association of Steubenville, the Greek Hellenic Association of Steubenville, that we currently still have within our parish. They're not affiliated with our parish, but all the members of this organization belong to this parish, called a HEPA. And it's a fraternal organization that comes together and just discusses education, discusses things that we can do together to, just help with our own and taking care of the people that need help. So that organization got together because there was no room in the inn across the hill, across the river in the Weirton church. It was just too small for all of the people. And there was a major influx of industry and everything that was going on. It just couldn't hold all of us. So we got together and bought, when they were looking to sell, bought the building E45 from the Calvary Methodist Church. And it has been in the possession of the Greeks or Greek Orthodox Church ever since. And at that time, I believe the incorporation name includes the areas of Steubenville. I believe it includes Mingo somehow, but I definitely know that it includes East Liverpool because there was a huge Greek population up in East Liverpool, and instead of going left towards Weirton when they would come down Route 7, they went right and continued in and decided to be affiliated with our parish. I'm not sure if that kept them in Ohio. They felt better about that. I'm not sure, but I do know that there are still one or two people that remember coming to church in East Liverpool that are members of this parish today. So that's pretty cool. But so that's kind of like our building. That's kind of what we are as a building. That's kind of where we came from as a building, and how long we have been at a Christian church on this corner is over 200 years. Christianity has been a presence at the corner of South and 4th Street in Steubenville for over 200 years. And it's a beautiful thing. And we take great pride in knowing that not only do we have the first Methodist church in Steubenville back in 1813, but it was also the first Greek Orthodox church in Steubenville when we bought it in 1945. And so we're, getting, if you're doing the math, we're getting up to 75 years. In 2020, will be 75 years that we will have had this building in this community. So you'll all be invited to our dinner. So it'll be good. You know the food will be good. So I'll just say something, just a little bit about Orthodoxy. For those of you that do not know, who here has never walked inside an Orthodox church before? Just raise your hand. You've never walked inside an Orthodox church. That's okay. And that's a beautiful thing. Not many, which is good. That means all of you are coming to our festival. That's good. It's wonderful. And I only bring this up several times because I know that when I first got here, I've only been the pastor here, the priest here, for 7 years. That was not. It was not in my plan to come here. It was my bishop's plan for me to come here, and it's been a joyous one. So whenever I got here, many people in the town kept telling me, "Father, you're not going to stop the festival, are you?" No, I don't think so. I've never known a Greek church have some way of feeding people. So they said, "No, you have to keep the festival." I'm like, "Okay." So, and I didn't understand it until I saw it for the first time. And when I saw it, then I understood that that festival. And this is not my work. You'll see how much work I actually do during the festival. It's this. I get to walk around and talk to people and tell them about Christ. That's not work. That's joy. I get to pick up some trays or something, once in a while, or do some church tours. That's not work. That's joy. The people that work, you see them sweating. They work, and they do it for all of us. They do it because we come together for 4 days and we have nothing but smiles on our faces. It's beautiful. Once I saw that, I can say that I have never seen a festival like this parish puts on, like you come to appreciate. It's a beautiful thing. And may we continue finding more ways of doing other things. Because the 4-day festival we do, it breaks our backs. So we can't do anymore. So just a little word about Orthodoxy so that you get a sense of what's happening here. When you walk inside an Orthodox church, mind you, when they built this, the stained glass is all Calvary Methodist. The dome that you see, not inside, but outside, obviously until this year when we literally just recovered it, was all Calvary Methodist, except for the silver part of it we had to retouch it up. But it was built structurally by an architect who built 2 buildings. One here and one in Wheeling. The one in Wheeling, I believe, is not even being used, and we can't even find the original architect's blueprints for this building. So we've actually been using the ones from Wheeling because they're very similar. And what you see is a very Byzantine structure. So much so that my brother, who is an architect, walks in here and says, "How is this building standing?" Now, I don't know if you know what you know about architecture, but when you have a dome, it has to be supported. It has to be supported normally by good, curved, uniformly curved archways. Now, if you look at our archways, they are not uniformly curved. They are flat archways. You can see it. It kind of flattens off at the top. You need to actually have, for it to be distributing the weight properly on an archway, that it has to come down. Now, I'm not an architect. This is what my brother was telling me as he was going through here. He said, your archways are too flat to hold up the dome that you have. And I said, well, did you tell God that? Because they're holding up. And the other thing that's really unique about this structure of a building is the fact that normally archways have to be supported by pillars. That's what you have to have. Now, if you are following the archways, they do come down into pillars. They absolutely do. But if you're not really paying attention, you don't see pillars. And when the Archbishop of America came to consecrate this church in 1950, after 5 years of getting an icon screen and getting different icons to make the building a little more ornate and look a little more Orthodox, to fit a worship space that we're used to having. When he came down to see it, he said, this is a very unique building. It is a building that was built without pillars. It's being supported without pillars. Except for the pillars, he said, that I see in each and every one of you. And it was a very touching moment for the people that lived, and that quote has remained in this parish, even to the point where this priest, of just 7 years, knows it very well. So, architecture in a sanctuary is very important to the Orthodox, not just to look Orthodox or feel Orthodox. It's all about how you enter. It's all about what you are doing. It's all about knowing that when you walk into a church, it is fashioned in the shape of a cross. So that even the structure of the building, even though when you look on the outside it kind of looks like a box, that's fine. But when you're inside, you can't miss it. The structure and architecture of the church is a cross. And more of the modern and even some of the ancient Byzantine architecture of churches is like that. Not all of it, but the most popular style was this, making it in the shape of the cross, so that you come in at the feet of Christ. And before you leave, you are being fed right at his heart. Because this is the nave of the sanctuary. That is the actual sacred sanctuary space. This place right here, I don't even have a word for it in English. We call it the solea. But if that represents earth, where we all are, and if that represents heaven, where God is, this is the place of the heart of Christ. It's where earth meets heaven. And every single one of our sacraments are distributed right here to our people. So you have to come out of the earth. But don't worry, you don't have to go all the way up to heaven. God comes and descends and comes and sees us and blesses us where we are. But he wants us to take a few steps. So that's a little bit of just about the structure. I have prepared about 5 minutes more just to give you one little brief of those people who do not know what Orthodoxy is. I will just give you the shortest synopsis. And then from there, if people have questions about something that you're seeing, what is something, I'll explain it, whatever you need. But that's all I have to prepare for today. And just basically, in the shortest nutshell that I can give it, is that Orthodox Christianity is a descendant of 4 of the 5 ancient centers of Christianity that existed from the time of Jesus' resurrection, the day of Pentecost, and everything that happened from there until today. And those 4 areas where you would think Orthodoxy has descended from are in the eastern part of what was called the Roman or Byzantine Empire. So you're dealing with Jerusalem, where everything happened. You're dealing with Antioch, where there was the place where they were first called Christians. Alexandria was another major trade city, and the 4th one was Byzantium, renamed Constantine's city when he moved it from Rome. And Rome was a part of that, but we all know that eventually. I shouldn't say we all know. Eventually, over the course of time, there was a separation after the first millennium. The Roman Church went their way, the Eastern Church kind of went their way, and we're working on that. Because neither one of us, if you talk to my Catholic brethren, and if you spend time with me, neither one of us are happy with that situation. We want that to be fixed. We want that to be healed. But we can only pray for it. We pray for the people that are in contact with one another. But what you know of the Roman Church, there were 4 other churches that you may or may not be aware of that existed in the eastern part of that empire. Anyone that finds and traces their lineage through those 4 calls themselves Orthodox to this day. That includes Russia. That includes the eastern kind of Balkan, areas. Slavic lands, and not just Russia, but Ukraine, Georgia, that was all Russia, I guess, at one point. But they're separate churches. Bulgaria, Romania, all of those places have, for the most part, some allegiance back to one of those 4. Even if over the years they found themselves under Rome eventually, somewhere along the line, I always tell people, if you're going to trace your history, at some point you got to be under one of those 5. I put my hand this way because if you're Greek, you never put your palm in front of anyone's face. That's a disrespectful thing to do. So if you trace yourself, you got to be one of those 5. That's what the ancient churches say. So over the course of history, if you know the history of wars and things like this that existed, you also know that eventually there was a move from the Mongols, from those eastern Turks, not the current Turks that live in Turkey where they are now. I'm talking about the eastern kind of Mongolian Turks, that Turkish Empire, that came in and kind of ransacked Constantinople, and basically the eastern part of that empire was enslaved for the next 400 years. We have a whole list of saints in the Orthodox Church that are called neo-martyrs because they would not convert to Islam. And so that was just, that was what we existed. That was how we existed for 400 years until 1821 when the Church of Greece declared their independence from those Turks. And eventually, we're not quite healed yet. And, if you know about recent events, those recent events are taking place largely because the church in Constantinople is getting more fame. A lot of the stuff that you see and hear in the East, I know there's other political things that are going on in other places, but when you hear about it going on in Turkey, it's happening because largely because the church in Constantinople, where the Patriarch Bartholomew is currently there, he's getting to be a name. And as he's getting to be a name, he's got a target. And even though they won't attack him, they'll attack the other Christians in those areas. I've visited some of those places, and it's desolate. So, we are Orthodox. The word itself means correct, the correct glory. It is not a name that we take lightly. Not every person that is Orthodox necessarily knows everything that I particularly know about the faith, but they are taught it. And so we try as best as we can to be as correct in our theology, as correct in our biblical reading, as correct in our teaching as we possibly can. If there are theologies out there that differ, as respectfully as we can, we look at them. For the most part, they have already been discussed by us and sought out and read within the Scriptures as to whether or not they are in fact heresy. And for the most part, we find that we're not guilty of that. But nevertheless, we can be wrong. We're human. So that is all that I have prepared as far as this is a wonderful gathering. I'm just looking and eyeballing about 40 to 50 people I'm looking at easily. 60, all right, see? Pretty decent eyeball. Price is right, I would have won. So please. Yes, please.
The circuit of portraits in the archway, are they the apostles?
Yes.
There's 11.
There are 12.
Did I miss count?
Yes, and they did leave Judas out because he would not be one of the 12. There are two underneath.
Oh, there's one under.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. If you are up in the balcony, you can see all 12 of them without a problem. They are the 12. And actually, those icons do not include Matthias, who was in Acts of the Apostles, the one that filled the 12. They do not include Matthias. Matthias is still, unfortunately, left out of this because we have included Paul.
Oh, Paul.
Yes, Paul, it's hard to not include him. And the number 12 is very, very significant. You can't get around that. You can't say there's 13 apostles. You can't. If you are a reader of the Bible, you can't say 13 apostles. You can't do it. Even though that is indeed the fact. Actually, 14 if you include Judas, but he's according to Christ the Son of Perdition, so we kind of leave him out. But you have to say 12. 12 is very, very important. So for us, we don't ignore Matthias. But we put Paul where he belongs, and then Matthias, he's not forgotten about. He has a feast day within the church, but when we depict the 12, we put Paul where he belongs, which is essentially right next to Peter. It's a good question. Sorry you couldn't see that. Please.
Could you explain why an icon is different than a painting?
It's the use. The question, if you heard it, was why is an icon different than a painting? It's how it's used. I've seen icons in a museum, and forgive me, whoever is the iconographer, whether they're alive or deceased. But when I see an icon in a museum, I have a different relationship with it than I do here. I don't, like it's not, that's a different setting. And I'm not going to tell you that an icon doesn't belong in a museum. I'm just telling you that I just have a different relationship with it. It's behind bulletproof glass. I cannot come up and, treat it with respect. I can't, these are meant to be used not just as teaching tools, but we look at icons. I know people may have heard that icons are windows into heaven. As respectfully as I can say that, I'll say that's nice, that's good, because you kind of look through a window, you don't look at a window, that's good. I like that part of the theology. But I kind of look at icons as kind of like a reflection. If you see a reflection of a lion, if you see a picture of a lion, no one's scared. But if you're in a lake and you look down and you see a reflection of a lion, oh boy. And we don't look at icons as kind of just, images just for the sake of images. They are supposed to get us in our brain to think beyond oneself. They are supposed to get us to have a relationship with whoever is depicted, not the icon itself, but the person behind it. They are supposed to lift us out. And part of iconography within the church and the church structure is to dissolve these walls should dissolve, not so that you can hear the sirens and whatever you're hearing outside the walls of the church, but so that they dissolve and you are lifted. The image that I have, one of my favorite images of icons, is because of a woman that in her dream had died. She died in her dream. I know they say you can't do that, but this is what happened. So she died in her dream, and she ascended into heaven. And in that dream, as she ascended into heaven, she was worshiping God the way she did when she was on the earth. It was this eternal, beautiful worship, and she had all these descriptions and all these written things. But then she looked around and she was like, well, where are the icons? Where are the things that remind me that I'm in church, right? And she pointed, she kind of tapped somebody on the shoulder, and it was John the Baptist. And she said, where are the icons? She's like, I don't know. And he tapped somebody else, and it was Peter. It's like, where are you? And then all of a sudden she goes, wait a second. I'm surrounded by them. I'm worshiping with them. I'm worshiping the eternal God with them. If the icons are doing anything else beyond that, we can teach with them, that's fine. But if they're doing anything else, they should be first and foremost reminding us who it is that we are worshiping. Not just who we are worshiping. We should know that. That's why we're here. But it's to remind us who we are worshiping, who it is that we are praying. And it's a nice little focal point. There was a question about this.
What is the role of Mary in your religion?
What's the role of her in the Bible? Blessed are you among women, blessed is the fruit of your womb. I believe at one point the Bible says all generations will call me blessed. We don't give her a position. The scriptures already did that. We have a very comfortable relationship with her because Jesus did. So, he treated her with respect throughout his life, as far as we can tell, except for the 3 days that he was missing when he was 12. But, he was almost a teenager, I mean, I tell my own teenagers this: you have to be respectful of your parents. Even that story says, he didn't stay behind when his parents found him. As soon as his parents found him, he left with them. So, and at his death, he made sure that she was being taken care of. He made sure that she absolutely was going to be taken care of. Woman, behold her son, he says to John the Apostle, behold your mother. So we give her the position that the scripture gives her. I'm not gonna. It's a longer answer that maybe you want to come to a Bible study. I'll answer it fully, but that's the short answer. Yes, please.
And the services enacted in Greek.
For the most part, the words that you will hear out of my mouth are English. I'll do some Greek for people that want to hear that. I'll do some Slavonic because there are some Serbs and Russians that come here whenever necessary. For the most part, my choir is bilingual. Some of the longer hymns, they've been practicing in Greek since they were, so I don't make them change. They're very comfortable with that. But we do mostly in English. You will. The hardest language to learn is the language of worship. And I'm not talking about the spoken language of worship. I'm just talking about the rhythm and the life of it. If you are not used to being in a ritualistic ceremony that worships the Lord in a very, I would say pious way, then that's a language all of its own. The service that we use that's in your pews is a liturgy that was written 1,500 years ago. For the most part, it hasn't changed, except that we're praying for people that travel by air. They didn't do that 1,500 years ago. I mean, for the most part, it's what you see is what you could take this book, go back 1,500 years ago, and you can pretty much follow it. It's not ancient. I was saying this earlier. It's timeless. So, good question. That's Paul. Yeah. That's a good example of what not an icon is. That's not an icon. And I'll end there. I'll end here. An icon, a traditional icon, is very two-dimensional. And I'm not just talking about two-dimensional as far as you're on a canvas, two-dimensional. I'm talking about even in the picture itself. Very two-dimensional. You have a foreground and a background in an icon. This icon has this picture, I should say, fresco. It's not even a fresco because it's on the wall, or painted on the wall. But you can look into it for days. There's scenes behind scenes behind scenes behind scenes. This was written by an artist who had given a gift to the parish when we bought it. Our parish, actually, community, the first Greek community had a church that lasted only for a couple years, named Saints Peter and Paul. So they always had an affinity to the apostles Peter and Paul. And so whenever we bought the church, there's actually a smaller version of this in our boardroom. They gave us that depiction, and everyone loved it. And basically, it's a depiction of Paul preaching to the Athenians about the unknown God. This is the Men of Athens speech that you read in the Acts of the Apostles. And the woman that's crying at his feet is supposed to be a kind of personification of democratia, of the old democracy, which included paganism, which included this idea that you can have as many gods as you want, much like our government. But so we see here that this is her death. She's crying because she's dying, because what Paul is saying does not allow for paganism. It doesn't allow for many gods. It doesn't allow for differences of philosophy. There can only be one. And that was not good news to that society, to those people. If they were going to try to merge the two together, it wouldn't have worked. They could either stay where they were or adopt a new one. So that's what the artist was trying to depict. But I mean, that place in the Acropolis, I've been in Athens, it really doesn't look like that. And I'm not critiquing the author. I actually tell people that it looks more like Paul's at the Senate defending himself right before he's beheaded. And it's in the fact that it can be multi-purpose like that. That's the other reason why it can't be an icon. An icon is very, very clearly depicting something. You can't mistake what it is. So, okay, last one because I'm looking at the time.
When do you have your services?
We have our services tonight at 6 o'clock. We will have a intercessory prayer service, which is why I cannot continue with you. I feel badly about that. If there's a feast day, we'll have it during the week or whatever. But on Sundays, we have our services at 10 o'clock. Our Eucharistic prayer service called Divine Liturgy is at 10 o'clock on Sundays. If you would like, on your way out, there are two flyers in the back. Most of you, I'm looking around, almost all of you except for probably a handful, are in the period of Lent right now. We have not started our Lent yet because we're on a different calendar. That is also a longer explanation. In the back, there are pamphlets about fasting. Because if there's something that all of us need, it's to really understand what that is. When Jesus says, when you fast, do it like this, or don't do it like this, we have to reconcile ourselves with that. So take one about fasting, at least what we say about it. May it, during your Lenten journey, offer some semblance of being able to offer that sacrifice of a little bit of our food to the Lord, so that our bellies don't have to be as much filled with food as they are with Him. And then right next to it, I didn't mean it this way, but this is just the way it worked out. It's our Fish Fest flyer. So, well, go figure. And I'm not, when I say that tongue in cheek because even though fish is fasting for many of the people that are in here, fish in the Orthodox Church is not a fasting food, it's a feasting food. So we are actually hosting this event outside of our Lent, knowing that it's within yours so that we both can enjoy it together. So it's actually working out nicely. I don't want to take up any more time. Where are we going, Laura?
We're next Thursday down the street, St. Paul's Episcopal Church. There is an SBR bus outside. Also, the Earth Mission donated the use of their van. If you'd like to use that, fine. If not, you can walk. First of all, thank you very much, Father Nick.
Where to go?
We very much appreciate you being part of this. In fact, first time I ever talked about it, I'm on the phone, and he sounded more joyous than he's naturally this evening. So it was very, very appreciated. Thank you very much.